Hello, and this is Big Bang Bot. Now, what can I say about SpongeBob? Well, I don't really want to talk too much about the show because that's something I don't like doing in my reviews. But SpongeBob was a TV series which became incredibly popular, which led to a ton of merchandise. And that includes a ton of toys, a movie, in fact 2 movies, since there's a new one coming out, and in case you want to know my thoughts on it, it's probably going to suck. And it also led to a lot of games, which will be my topic today. Now, the games can range from great, such as the greatness of Battle of Bikini Bottom, or they could be very... no. Just no. But I'm not going to take a look at either of those 2 games. Nope. Instead, I'll be looking at some different SpongeBob games. I'll be looking at SpongeBob games on the Game Boy Advance. Now, this console was released worldwide back in 2001. Well, except for in Korea or China, then you had to wait till 2004. And this system was very successful, and it had a ton of games. And it's a great system. And guess what? Because I just told you, I'll be reviewing SpongeBob games on the system! Yay! Now, the first game that I will be reviewing is SpongeBob SquarePants Super Sponge for the GBA. Now, I already made a review on this game, so let's go and watch that instead.
It's peanut butter jelly time! It's peanut butter jelly time!
On second thoughts, beat that, I'm just going to play the game. The story is the same in both the GBA and the PS1 version. Well, basically, SpongeBob wants to get Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy's signature for Patrick's birthday, because SpongeBob wants to get Patrick the best birthday present ever, but they keep sending SpongeBob on a bunch of random tasks, and SpongeBob has to do all of these tasks to get Patrick's birthday present. Yeah. The story is nothing special, but I don't care, it's a SpongeBob game. Let's get on to gameplay! Plus, this is like the first multiple review I've done since June of 2012, so yay! It's been 2 years since that! In the game, there are a total of 5 worlds, each with 4 levels each. The game is a simple point A to B platformer, so that's all I have to say. The controls are pretty basic. You press A to jump, B to use your glove, R to use your special move, and L to bring up your inventory. Yeah, it's pretty simple, but it's a GBA game, so I can accept it. The controls in this game suck. First off, SpongeBob's movement is quite slippery. The jumping just feels weird, and as for the slam, oh boy. First off, this is more of a problem with the hit detection, but you almost never hit an enemy with it, and even when you do, you take a hit as well. Plus, sometimes when I jump once, SpongeBob just randomly decides to plummet to my death with the butt bounce. This isn't too common, but when it does happen, it can lead to cheap deaths and cheap hits, and it's just annoying. But hey, at least it's less common than it is in Sonic Heroes, so that's cool, I guess. On his journey, SpongeBob can find his special abilities, such as this sucking up move, which you can use to kill enemies, and his basic one is a glove, and there's also sometimes a net, and bubbles, which are probably the most useful ones in the whole game, but these special moves are mostly just useless, or special abilities, I don't care. The graphics in the game are okay. okay. I mean, they have sort of a pre-rendered style, and while they don't look terrible, they don't look amazing either, I can definitely tell you that. Donkey Kong Country most definitely looks better than this, but it's a GBA game released in 2001, so I can forgive it. The music in this game is probably the best bit of the game, and that's saying something, because music actually isn't that amazing. I mean, with the exception of the first tune, the music is just above average and not amazing. The first tune is kind of catchy and I kind of like it. You can have a little listen for yourself. Well, you can't listen to it anymore, so whatever. The sound effects are okay, I guess. They're basic, but they're not annoying, and there's practically no voice acting. But SpongeBob does make a very weird sound when he jumps. Just listen to this. Are there any bad things about the game? Well, first off, the hit detection. The hit detection just sucks. I mean, sometimes it works, but most of the time, or some of the time, it can be annoying. I never usually bounce my enemies. I just hit them with my glove, hoping that I might hit them and they won't hit me, which does sometimes happen, and that's annoying when that happens. Plus, there are loads of cheap enemy placements, and that's just really annoying. Plus, the game just isn't really that fun. It's just kind of slow, it's basic, and it's just not that fun at all. The bosses are nothing special. I mean, you fight a giant jellyfish in the first stage. Okay. In the fourth world, which you'd assume is the final world, I mean, this level's called Final Stop, you fight the Flying Dutchman, and by the way, you fight a boss at the end of each world before you go on to the next world, and these bosses can be really annoying. I wouldn't call them hard, I just call them quite annoying. They're not the worst things in the world, but they can be annoying sometimes and get loads of cheap hits on you. You might even die once or twice when fighting them. Speaking of the difficulty, this game can get quite challenging sometimes, and that's not because the game was designed amazingly. It's more of the cheap level design and the cheap enemy placement and the knockback, which, in case you don't know, makes a recipe for some really annoying levels. But this game isn't super difficult, and I managed to beat it without using a continue. But it is still quite a hard game. Sometimes. Are there any good things about the game? Well, the graphics aren't bad, I guess. And the music, while not amazing, is possibly the best bit about the game. But overall, the game is just so meh. It's not very fun, the hit detection's wonky, the level design is annoying, the enemies are cheap, and overall it's just not the best game to play. Plus, it's incredibly short. I beat the game in like 40 minutes. That's right, 40 minutes. It's not that hard, it's really short, and the game shouldn't give you too much trouble. Okay, well maybe if you're a beginner you'll have trouble, such in this level, Sandy's Tree. You have to do a lot of platforming, and with these slippery controls, it's not the easiest thing in the world. Let me just tell you that. But I'm pretty good at this game, and I played this game when I was younger, so I'm actually kind of good at this tree climb. But it can still be annoying, and plus pants give you extra lives. Spatulas are basically this game's coins, but you can't buy anything with them. They just give you extra lives, so you collect 100 of them. And yeah, there are big items at the end of levels, which takes you to the next level, and yeah, it's pretty simple. overall, SpongeBob SquarePants Super Sponge is the ultimate example of a game that's just meh. The graphics are okay, the music's above average, that's one thing, but the game isn't very fun. There's practically no replay value. I mean, the game uses a password system. Now, it only has 4 characters, which is actually pretty good, but why not have a save system? I know the game is incredibly short, but still, a save system would have been nice. There's no reason to go back to the levels because there's no extra collectibles. And there's no different ending if you collect enough of a certain item. No, there's just one ending, which is not very rewarding. And overall, this game's just meh. The level design is annoying, and the bosses can be annoying. And overall, this game receives a D- from me. I do not recommend this game. If you're a die-hard SpongeBob fan, and if you must play it, then go ahead. But I say just skip this game. I never played the PS1 version, but I've heard it's received similar reviews to this, so I guess don't play that one either, because this game is just meh. But anyway, following up will be the SpongeBob SquarePants movie for the Game Boy Advance. Anyway, this was a game that was based on the 2004 movie of the same name, and whether you like the movie or not, we can all agree, hopefully we can all agree that the next SpongeBob movie is probably going to be worse than the SpongeBob movie we already have, which actually isn't that bad. The game basically follows the plot of the movie, so all I'm going to say is watch the movie if you want to know what the story is of the game. The end. The game has a total of 6 worlds, each with 4 levels and with a boss at the end, with one exception, which is actually the final world of the game, which has a boss right after the first stage, and then a boss at the end of the world, which is the final boss of the game, with King Neptune. The game is another point A to B platformer, but there's something you can immediately notice just by watching my footage of the game, hopefully. The game looks much better. The game uses more of a hand-drawn style, and it fits much better for SpongeBob. And it just looks more appealing. Now, we all have our own opinions, I know, but personally I much prefer this style. I mean, it looks a lot more like SpongeBob, and it's definitely more appealing to my eyes. It's bright and colourful, it's got a nice hand-drawn style, and it just looks a lot like SpongeBob. Not like the previous SpongeBob game didn't look like SpongeBob, but this one looks more like SpongeBob, and looks much nicer to the eyes. Well, at least in my opinion. If you prefer pre-rendered stuff, that's fine with me, but I prefer hand-drawn stuff, so whatever. This game has its own gimmick, and that's with Patrick. Basically, Patrick follows you for the whole game, and no, you can't, there's no parts in the game where you can play as Patrick. You're forced to play as SpongeBob, but Patrick always follows you, and you can use Patrick to make his pants, as a double jump, or just a floating ability which helps with platforming, and you and Patrick can even charge up a super run, which basically makes you turn into Sonic Mama Paper Hedgehog! So yeah, as you could probably see, this game is an improvement over the previous game. For that reason alone, I mean, you can go faster. That is an immediate thing that makes the game better. It makes it less boring, and while there is still cheap enemy placement and still some cheap deaths, the game does control better than the other game, and it's not a bad game at all. I can definitely tell you that. As for items, there's ice cream sundaes which give you an extra life. There's these clam things which you can use to buy items in Mindy's store. And there are anchors, which are basically checkpoints, but these do not appear in hard mode, which makes hard mode harder, even though it's still not super hard. In Mindy's store, you can buy a grand total of 3 things. You can buy extra lives, buckets, which I'll get a bit more into a bit later, and special secret levels. What the buckets do is that they basically stop your movement, and you can basically kill enemies all around you with the bucket. As in, it's basically a screen nuke, and it's actually pretty useful in the trench levels because of the wind. It literally stops you dead in your path so the wind doesn't affect you, but in all other levels it's practically useless. So that's all I have to say about that bucket thing. And I'd like to mention there's also a time limit, which is extremely generous on easy, but it can get kind of annoying on hard, but not too annoying. Speaking of difficulties, there are 3 difficulties: easy, medium, and hard. Easy basically gives you 12 lives and you're invincible. On medium, you have 6 lives and you have less health, or you're just invincible. On hard, you have 3 lives, there's no checkpoints, and you basically, well, it's basically harder because it's hard mode. So, yeah. Plus, items are more expensive on medium and hard. And you have even less health in hard, so yay for that. You can find these hidden doors and levels which take you to bonus stages, where you basically have to get to the end in time. It's a pretty simple concept, and these bonus stages, for the most part, are pretty simple. They can get kind of tough sometimes, especially on hard when you have a lot less time. But once you win these, you can basically get yourself a reward, such as some more clams, or a bucket, or extra lives. It's basically a random selection game, but whatever. There are even some levels where you're driving in a patty rat wagon or running on foot, and you basically have to get to the end. You've got to dodge obstacles for a minute and not lose health. And it's practically impossible to lose these on easy because you're invincible, for crying out loud. But on normal and hard, you do need to be careful. But on easy, you could just literally do nothing for a minute and then you'll win. So, yeah. This is a nice change of pace, however. These stages aren't that hard, but it is a nice change of pace. The music in this game is actually pretty good. I mean, there are some catchy tunes, the songs sound nice, and overall, these are songs I actually can remember. Surely they're not the best songs in the world, but compared to the other SpongeBob game I reviewed, they're actually a lot better. They're nice and catchy, they're upbeat, and overall, they're pretty good songs. And the sound effects are pretty basic, and there's not really any voice acting, so yeah. At the end of each world, you fight a boss, and these bosses are pretty easy, and from what I'm aware of, they're all from the film, which is pretty cool. But the thing is that these bosses are pretty easy, and that does kind of suck, except for one boss. And that is with the exception of the second boss, which is incredibly easy, and who I don't even remember from the film. Either that or he's coloured wrong, I don't know. But that was literally my entire fight with the boss. Pathetically easy. At least all the other bosses, you have to wait for their weak spots, but not that guy. Nope. Are there any bad things about the game? Yes. While the game does control better than the last game, the controls, I still can't quite call them perfect. That and Patrick's glide, while useful, does feel like you lose all the momentum when you use it. Plus the charge thing you lose right after you jump. Surely there's a frame perfect trick where you can do more jumps with it and keep your speed, but that is a frame perfect trick, and those are pretty difficult. Plus, you can't really buy that many things in the shop, which kind of sucks. That, and the game can get annoying sometimes. I mean, the game doesn't get too hard, but especially in Shell City, this game can get quite annoying sometimes, especially on hard. But I still never lost to continue, and this game is longer than the previous SpongeBob game, so that's a good thing, I guess. I'd also like to mention that, for whatever reason, in the final level, there's actually an area where you can get tons of, you know, clams. Why is this here? I have no beeping idea, but it's there. So if you want to get more clams, go to the final fight with Neptune and get them. Plus, the theme song from the show is the only song from the movie that is actually in the game, which does kind of suck. But the game still has a good soundtrack, so I can tell you that. But this game is actually pretty decent. It has some good graphics, there's some good music. The game isn't really that boring, it's just not the most fun in the world. And overall, the game can be enjoyable, it's just not the most enjoyable thing. And while the bosses are easy, they are still pretty interesting and not terrible. And this is still a pretty decent game. That, and I do love the credits theme, which is basically the bonus round theme from the Battle for Bikini Bottom game on the Game Boy Advance, but I don't care because it is a good song. Like, this whole game soundtrack is based on Battle for Bikini Bottom on the GBA, and in case you're wondering why I'm not reviewing that, it's because I don't own it, and I'm only reviewing GBA SpongeBob games I own. And also, just to let you know, you press A to jump, hold B to run, press down while in the air to do a slam, hold R to do your running thing, and then release to run. You use L to use your bucket, and press A while in midair to use Patrick's parachute or paraglider pants thingy majiggy. One more thing that sucks is the password system. First off, there are now 6 characters, which isn't way too many, but now you have to deal with the characters' faces as the password, and some of these are just unrecognizable. I mean, look at this! What the beep is this beeping thing? Oh wait, it's the ice cream monster, but I only know that because I played the game, but how would anyone who's not played this game would know that? And for people who aren't fans of SpongeBob, how will you know what these characters' names are? How will you be able to write them down? Sure, you could draw them, but I'm sure that none of us are artists or anything, so that will be pretty hard. And this password system just sucks. Overall, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie on the Game Boy Advance is actually a pretty decent game. While it may not be the best game in the world, and it's certainly not the most fun game in the world, it's still a pretty decent game. The graphics are good, the music is good, the game controls fine for the most part, and overall it is a good game. Or almost a good game, it's pretty decent. I give this game a C. While it's not an amazing game, if you find this game for cheap online, I say pick it up. It's actually a pretty decent game, which I recommend. Now, one thing I can say is that it's not as good as the console version of the game, but if you still want to play it, it is still a pretty decent alternative. And the PC version of the game is just, you know, a point-and-click game, but I've never played that version, and I'm not planning to. But that's enough of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, the game on the Game Boy Advance. But wow, that's a lot of games. I'm going to review one more game, making this my first ever triple review. And there won't be many more triple reviews in the future, but whatever. And that last game will be SpongeBob SquarePants Lights, Camera, Pants for the Game Boy Advance, which has a ton of different names depending on what language you're playing the game in. So let's play this game. And this is our final SpongeBob game, or my final SpongeBob game, because I don't own any more GBA SpongeBob games, and that's the focus for this review. The plot for the GBA version of the game is that the creators of a show called The New Adventures of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, are going to film a episode of the show in Bikini Bottom. But guess what? Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy aren't there! And since this is so terrible, the creators of the show sent SpongeBob, Patrick, Sandy and Squidward to save Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy once and for all. And it's a SpongeBob game, so the story doesn't really matter. Let's get on to the gameplay. In the game, there are a total of 4 worlds, each with 4 levels, and at the very end, there's a final level. You mean like in my old 3D games? Yes. It's just like that, Sonic, only that there's not multiple playthroughs to be played through. There's just one playthrough, and then you get to the final level in the entire game. These worlds include the Mermaid Lair, the Shady Shoals Rest Home, the beach, and I do not care what it's called, even though it is called Goo Lagoon, but whatever, who cares? And last but not least, a random movie studio, all to save Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy and get yourself your own parts in the TV show. Now, before you get mad at me, I will mostly be showing the first level, or the first world, as well as a few of the mini-games, and that is because of a flaw that I will mention later, and that is also why, that same flaw is also why I use YouTube to show you the next 3 worlds. In the game, there are a total of 4 playable characters: SpongeBob, Patrick, Sandy, and Squidward. And they've removed Mr. Krabs and Plankton for whatever reason. I'm pretty sure that the Game Boy Advance could handle 2 more characters. This game is another simple point A to B platformer, unlike the console version, which is basically a Mario Party type game. So, SpongeBob definitely liked 2D platforming on the GBA, I must say. Haha, GBA and say rhyme. Or A and say do, but hey, who cares? Before you start the game, you have 2 difficulties, easy or normal, or as I like to call them, very easy, and so pathetically easy that even a 2-year-old could beat it without much trouble. In easy, you're invincible, and in normal, you have health. But luckily, each character has their own health bar, 2 hits and then they're dead. But you can heal the characters by collecting these TV minis, which either heals a character completely or gives you an extra life. And on easy, it does the latter because, you know, you're invincible, basically. Now, each character has their own special abilities. SpongeBob is the smallest character, so he can fit through small gaps that the other characters can't. He has some pretty good attacks on the ground. By the way, there are 2 attacks you can do on the ground, a punch and a running move. SpongeBob has some really good ground attacks, but his air attack sucks. He blows himself up and he doesn't really gain that much height. Kinda sucks. And then there's Patrick, who is my personal favourite. Patrick has some pretty good ground attacks. He has an ice cream, which may arc over everything, but you can still hit things with it. Plus, he has a cartwheel, which is almost as good as SpongeBob's slide. That and his butt bounce really gives him a lot of height, which is also really cool. That, and when you're in a boat, Patrick is the absolute fastest. I would explain the boat sections, but Sonic won't let me! Then we have Sandy, who can walk on spikes, which is an awesome thing and the only positive about her. And she does have some pretty good ground attacks, but her air attack sucks. And I use her the least, except when spikes are a problem, which they are usually not, especially on easy, when you're basically invincible to nearly everything. Last but not least is Squidward. Squidward has the worst ground attacks, and he's the slowest character and the tallest character. But Squidward's air attacks are amazing. He literally goes so high when you use them, which does help with platforming. And the cool thing is that you can actually switch characters on the fly just by pressing the R button, which is actually a really awesome feature. Press A to jump, you press B to punch, L does nothing, and R lets you switch characters. It's pretty simple, and you tap the D-pad twice to run. The controls are simple, and they work just fine, in my opinion. The graphics are pretty good, in my opinion. They look similar to the ones in Battle of Bikini Bottom. In fact, SpongeBob's and Patrick's models just came out of Battle of Bikini... No, not Battle... the SpongeBob Squarepants movie on the same console. And they look pretty good, in my opinion. And the levels are still bright and colourful, and all of the other characters look pretty good as well. So, the graphics are pretty nice in this game, let me just say that. The music is also pretty good. It's based on the soundtrack from the SpongeBob Squarepants movie game, which is based on the soundtrack in Battle of Bikini Bottom on the GBA. So it's a soundtrack based on a soundtrack based on another soundtrack, and it's pretty good. Here's the remix to the credits theme from the previous SpongeBob game on GBA and the previous one before that, and it's a pretty good remix in my opinion. The sound effects are average, nothing special to talk about, and there's practically no voice acting in the entire game, so can't talk about that either. And there are also a few more game modes other than the regular platforming, which makes sense because the console version was a party game. There's a long jump, which is just one of the mini games. And basically, the best way to win this is not by jumping a really long way. No, in fact, it's just dropping with SpongeBob and just floating around the whole place. How would you guess that? But as for the actual other mini games, which actually appear in the main campaign mode, there's this mini game where you have to make a Krabby Patty, which is in the style of the classic Game & Watch game Fire, and there's even a mini game where you basically have to bounce Krabby Patties into a bucket, which practically is fire. I mean, look at this. This is so obviously like the Game & Watch game Fire. Just look at this. It's practically the exact same thing, just with the SpongeBob licensed all over it. Or licensed, not licensed, but whatever. My English is not perfect, but it's not terrible either. But who the beat cares? There's also driving mini games where you basically have to chase down a bad guy and then grab him, or you're just racing him, or you're just trying to get to the end on time, or another mini game where you're just basically playing this mini game where you have to destroy targets. It's pretty simple. And last but not least is Dance Dance Spongeolution. Well, that's what I like calling it, which is basically DDR just with the SpongeBob license. And it's actually kind of fun. All of these minigames are actually quite fun, just to let you know. But this game does have its negatives. And then there's two big ones. That's all I can really say. First off, the game is way too short and easy. I mean, this is the final level, and it's not even that hard. You can literally get through this final stage on your first try, whether you're playing this on easy or medium. It's just not that hard. Plus, the ending isn't really worth it, so whatever. And the second problem, which is my biggest problem with this game, the actual level progression. Now, once you finish a level, you can't go back. Nope, you absolutely can't go back. If you want to get back, you have to beat the game, then replay the game just to play some of the older levels again. That is the dumbest thing ever. Surely you still keep your mini games that you buy in the shop. And by the way, they're more expensive on medium. But still, this is just stupid. Why can't you just revisit any level when you can? This is just so dumb. And my biggest flaw with the game, other than the fact that this game is extremely short and easy. Seriously, you can easily beat this game in an hour or less. And unlike the other two SpongeBob games, which were actually pretty tough, this is a really easy game, no matter if you're playing on easy or medium. It's just pathetically easy. But other than that, this actually is a pretty fun game. I mean, the graphics are nice, it's got some very good music, the game control's fine, and overall it's fun, it's enjoyable. Well, it's not the best game in the world. I mean, the level progression, I don't know whether I should say progression or something else, I just don't know what to say, but the level, the ways that you play, that you have to revisit the levels, I just don't know how to put it in words, but, and the game's extremely short length, this game is just fine, and it's actually pretty fun. I just wish that the game was longer. I mean, why couldn't it have more worlds, or even longer worlds? That would have helped. Plus, Plankton and Plankton and Mr. Krabs weren't in the game, and that was kind of a shame, but it's not a huge thing. But overall, this game is still fun. Overall, SpongeBob SquarePants Lights Camera Pants for the Game Boy Advance is actually a really fun game. It's not perfect. I mean, the way that the game expects you to revisit levels and the length of the game do hold it back, but it's still a really fun game. I mean, the graphics are nice, the music is great, the game control's fine, and overall it's a fun game. I give this game... I'm stuck between a B and a B+. I'll give it a B+. This is a very fun SpongeBob game that I definitely recommend for the GBA. Now, in case you're wondering a good SpongeBob game that I definitely recommend you play, and if you want a good SpongeBob game, Battle for Bikini Bottom immediately. I mean, this is like the best licensed game I've ever played. No, really, this game is like genius. I mean, the graphics are nice, the music is great, the controls are just fine, and overall this game is so much fun, and it's so enjoyable, and the glitches also make the game even more fun. This game gets an A+, and whether you're a SpongeBob fan or not, and even if you hate SpongeBob, get this game, it's great. Now back to the GBA games. Now, if you want a good portable SpongeBob game that you want to play on the go, the best one I can recommend is Lights, Camera, Pants, no matter what console you're going to play. Yeah, I mean, it's not perfect, it's definitely way too short, but it is still fun, and I definitely recommend it. As for comparing it to the console version, I've never played the console version, so I can't compare it. So this is the best SpongeBob game on the GBA, and I do recommend it, even if you're not a SpongeBob fan. Battle for Bikini Bottom I recommend to everybody. If you love 3D platformers, then play this. If you love SpongeBob, then get this. Even if you're not a fan of either of those things, or if you're not a fan of 3D platformers, then maybe you should not play this. But if you do like 3D platformers, definitely play this game. But as for the SpongeBob SquarePants movie on the GBA, it's pretty decent. It's not amazing. I mean, it's not as good as the console version, which is not as good as Battle for Bikini Bottom. But it is still a pretty decent game. I mean, the graphics are nice, the music's great, the controls work fine, and overall, the game is pretty decent. Surely it's not the funnest game in the world, but it's longer than this SpongeBob game, which is extremely short and easy, and it's more challenging. So, if you want a portable version of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, then this is your only version that you can get, but I do recommend it. If you want to play this SpongeBob SquarePants the movie on the go, then this is pretty decent. And as for the console version of the game, it's based on Battle for Bikini Bottom, which is kinda lazy, but hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it is still a fun game. I mean, Battle for Bikini Bottom, it's an A+, it's great. This game is like an A or a B+. It's not as good as Battle for Bikini Bottom, but it's still really fun, and I definitely recommend it if you're a SpongeBob fan or a 3D platformer fan. And even if you don't like the movie, I still recommend this game. And last but not least on our GBA list, or on my GBA list, is SpongeBob SquarePants Super Sponge. This is just a mediocre GBA game, which I only recommend to the most die-hard SpongeBob fans. I mean, the graphics are meh, the music is above average, the controls aren't the best, and overall, it's just not that fun. It gets a 4 out of 10. Or D-. So I don't really recommend this game unless you're a die-hard SpongeBob fan. I mean, Battle of Bikini Bottom, I recommend to everyone. And the movie I do also recommend for everyone. Lights, Camera, Pans, I recommend to a lot of people. Who just, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people. People who like 2D platformers and people who like SpongeBob, I definitely recommend this. The GBA movie game I recommend for people who are fans of SpongeBob or fans of 3D platformers. And this game I only recommend to most die-hard SpongeBob fans. It's just... nah. So anyway, that was my review. Thanks for watching this review. And even if it wasn't as good as my other ones, oh, I had 3 games to review. You know, I just wanted to do shorter reviews on 3 games which I wanted to share with you guys. So please comment, rate and subscribe. And I'm fully aware that there's more SpongeBob games on the GBA. I mean, there's one based on Revenge of the Flying Dutchman. There's one based on Battle for Bikini Bottom, which I've heard is a pretty decent game, but I know for a fact that won't hold up to the console version. There's also a game based on Atlantis Squarepants, and then there's a game based on Creature for the Crossing. Ah! Seriously. But anyway, thanks for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Please comment, rate, and subscribe. Now, guys, if you want me to review that piece of beat down there, then please tell me. And if there are other games that you want me to review, then please tell me. I know this was a very long conclusion, but hey, I had 3 games to talk about, so whatever. Anyway, this is Big Bang Bot signing out.